Hello, everyone. Today is Tuesday, December 1st. December 1st. We're getting close to the end of the year. There's a lot going on. There's a lot happening. It's going to be a rush once people realize that people need to get out and start shopping for the holidays. People are really going to want to start picking up product from the store. Today, we're really going to look and focus on one of them, which is Commander Collection Green. That is the new Magic product that is coming out this Friday on December 4th. We're going to go through all the different sets, different cards inside, break down, figure out, is there anything that is actionable? Is there anything that gives us opportunity to buy in and potentially make money on? So with that, we'll hop right in. My beverage of choice today is orange juice, kind of going on a healthier kick, so minimizing the amount of coffee and other non-things I really drink. So really, it's just orange juice is kind of the thing I will drink a little bit, and water. That's about it. May have to change the title. It needs to be Collectibles and Orange Juice, but that doesn't have quite the same ring, so we'll see where we go from there. So with that, let's hop right in. Commander Collection Green. What is it, and why is it so important? So this is kind of it feels like a continuation of products that they've done and released over the years. We've seen this in the past. I think their first iteration of this type of product would be From the Vault Legends, or From the Vault Legends, From the Vault, just in general, which was a product line. It was a unique product. It was an annual product. They released it once a year. It was released every year, and they had a theme that they would focus on for that particular product. For those of you who may remember, the very first one was From the Vault Dragons. It had a full spread of 15 different dragons, kind of from all different eras of Magic. They've done different ones. They've done relics, which were artifacts, exiled, which were cards that were banned, angels, annihilation, etc. That was kind of their first foray in this. It draws a lot of parallels to what we see right now in terms of distribution. From the Vault products was basically Wizards of the Coast trying to reward their stores. And what is meant by this is this was the first type of product that when it came out, it had MSRP of, I believe it was $34.99. It may have gone up to $39.99 in the future. But the difference here was that the demand for this product was very high. The resale value was very high in the secondary market, mainly because many stores were severely allocated in how many of these boxes they would be getting. Of course, as with most limited type products, as we see, the secondary market value was really driving a lot of people to be trying to buy as many of these From the Vault products as possible. Some of them were misses, but for the most part, their scarcity usually made it so that it was easy enough to buy. If your store did sell them at MSRP, many stores did not. This is kind of a tie back to Wizards wanting to reward their stores by getting this product that basically had a premium on it. From what I saw, a lot of stores would do creative things. There were stores that would place a limit. There were some stores that said each customer could only buy one, but they would get MSRP. Some stores, due to their huge demand, they would have a lottery type system where, excuse me, they would basically allow everyone who wanted them to basically put their name, put one entry into like a raffle, and they would draw names, and those people would get them at MSRP just as a way to ensure fairness when you have more people wanting the product and the product is available to buy. Some stores just didn't care. Some stores sold it at inflated prices to kind of match what the secondary market was doing. So I definitely recall stores selling this $60, $70, $80, $100. Really, the spread was kind of varying. Towards the end of the lifeline of the From the Vault product, it felt like it started to kind of die out. It felt like it had really jumped the shark in terms of the coolness that was going into it. This was also plagued by the fact that there were a lot of quality control issues with the From the Vault product. A lot of them felt like it really missed the mark in terms of how good the card felt. The card stock really didn't feel very good. They were very, very prone to warping. There are definitely people who would just open the cards and warp right away. Some of the cards, they come in individually sealed packets inside the box just to hold them together. They would actually warp inside the pack, and you could look at them. I don't have a From the Vault handy, and some were actually starting to curve inside the pack just due to how they were stored over the years. So that was kind of their first That was kind of their first initial offering for this type of product. I think it's kind of shifted over. We've seen them do the Planeswalker collection. I believe they've done Gideon, Chandra, Jace. I think those are three. I'm gonna pull it up right now. Same idea. They're each signature spellbook. The name had escaped me there. Signature spellbook. They basically focus on one of the main planeswalkers in the story, and each of these planeswalkers would have a set of cards that were thematic to both themselves, and they would feature art centered around themselves in the story. So, for example, I just pulled up the signature spellbook for Gideon right here. We have Rest in Peace, Gideon Jura, Shielded by Faith, Path to Exile, Martyr's Bond, Worship, True Conviction, Blackblade Reforged. So again, all these kind of have a tie back to Gideon in some form. Same idea. These were relatively fixed inside the pack. I believe the uniqueness of this product was that the foil was random inside each pack. You were guaranteed to get non-foils, one of each non-foil inside the pack, but the foil would be random. So that made it a little bit difficult because some of these obviously much more desirable than others. Rest in Peace, Path to Exile, the foil probably going to have higher demand than something like all these do see play in some capacity. Martyr's Bond, for example, that one I imagine may see the least amount of play and probably has the least demand for in foil. So that was kind of their transition, kind of their next moving away from the Vault Legends, offering this, and now here we are. Commander Collection Green, this is the first one. I imagine this is something that they'll continue to do as a full cycle. They'll probably do one of these for each color. It would only make sense for them to do so. I imagine they're probably going to hold off on what it looks like in terms of development until they see how this one plays out. But now that we're here, what is Commander Collection Green? So if you haven't seen it yet, it's basically the same idea as these in the past. It is a box product. It has a fixed set of cards inside. There's no variation in them. So unless you need more than one of the cards, and you just want to collect it, you only need to buy one. You'll get all 8 cards. The set list of the cards is Bane of Progress, Command Tower, Freyalise, Lawn Wars Fury, Omnath, Locus of Mana, Seedborn Muse, Soul Ring, Sylvan Library, and Worldly Tutor. So these are green cards. Obviously, the exception is Command Tower and Soul Ring. Even though they're not green cards themselves, they do see a lot of play inside Commander decks. I imagine the majority of decks would be playing Command Tower and Soul Ring. And those two cards, even though they're not green cards themselves, they actually have a green slant to them. So if you look closely at the art, they both have unique art and they both feature green in some way. So you could think of it as a green Soul Ring or a green Command Tower for those people that really do immerse themselves inside into the flavor of their deck, into how their deck looks, and they have a mono green deck. This would give them a different option than your relatively generic Command Tower, relatively generic Soul Ring. So here, our goal today, we're going to kind of look and break down these two products and then look at the cards inside. It's important to note, these two products, there's two different products. There is the normal version, which has all non-full versions of these cards, which are available to all WPN stores. So if you have a store, if you're with WPN, Wizards Play Network, you're able to order these. You should be able to get some amount of the non-foil version. If you want the foil version, the premium version, which is the same set, except all the cards inside are foil versus non-foil, you have to be a WPN premium store. As I was writing up this outline earlier today, I tried really hard. I actually can't find a list of WPN premium stores. From what I could gather, if I typed in my area, if I typed in my zip code where I lived, or if I typed in Portland, Oregon, for example, it would bring up a map that would tell me where my closest WPN premium store is, but it doesn't actually give me a list. I actually don't know how many WPN premium stores are in the country. If someone has this information or can tell me how to look this up, I would love to hear it, because I'm definitely curious to see what number of stores are able to make the transition from WPN to WPN Premium, because there's definitely a pretty big jump. They do look at various metrics for people who don't own a retail store. In order for you to reach WPN Premium, there are a fairly strict set metrics that you have to adhere to. You have to have a certain amount of people who you are registering DCI numbers for. You have to have a certain number of people who constantly are attending your tournaments, your in-store events. You have to have a certain amount of play space set aside. You have to be able to sit a certain amount of people. Visually, your store has to meet certain standards. You do have auditors who will come by and inspect your store and take a look at the store to make sure that your store is clean. You have a certain number of product that they require you to carry, etc. There's a reason that people do strive for WPM Premium. It is not something that is reasonable to obtain for all stores, mainly because some stores are simply too small. There are a lot of great stores out there. I know quite a few people who do own great stores that will basically never be able to reach premium given the constraints they're working with. For a lot of those people, the majority of those people, their store is simply too small. If they do want to upgrade into premium and be on that, possibly that list, that would require them to simply lease out a new space that has more play space. That's usually the first factor that will kind of sort out most of these stores. Most of these stores, if they do have a smaller space they're working with and they're still on a lease, they're most likely not going to be an option where they can break that lease, move into a bigger store to try and work towards premium. That being said, I know some of the WPN premium stores, some of them I've visited, and it's very easy to tell, okay, this is going to be a WPN premium store, but I don't have a list. Again, I'm really curious what that looks like. If someone out there has information or can direct me to a list where it's been posted somewhere, I would love to see it. But for now, just going off of this, it does seem like, because in order for you to get the Commander Collection Green Premium, you have to be a WM Premium store. It does feel like these will be reasonably rare, and they will be fairly sought after. When I was looking on TCG, just looking at the sealed boxes themselves, not looking at the singles, I see there's a relatively small number of listings. We don't see a lot of them hit online yet. I do suspect that they are going to be fairly allocated in terms of supply. We may see more in the coming days. It is only Tuesday. Usually most stores don't really receive their product until Wednesday or Thursday prior to the release date. So it may change, but right now I really only see 28 listings on TCG Player for the non-foil version. Obviously, some of these will have more listings. It's not individual. For example, the cheapest option I see has 5 copies of this, and then the next seller has 3, the next seller has 3, and the next seller has 6, the next seller has 6. So there's definitely a decent amount, but there's only 28 unique listings with stores for the non-foil, and then for the premium version, I only see 7 listings. So if we, in a very poor form, if we assume that 25% of stores out there are premium, which is far higher than what I actually expect. If we want to transition that, we can see that the Commander Collection Green will be reasonably rare and reasonably sought after, and the price does reflect that. So we are looking at about $250 for the premium version versus about $88, $90 or so for the non-premium version. So there's definitely a big jump. It'll be really interesting to see how much demand there is for the foil versus non-foil. If we just look at evidence from the past few years, looking at some of the products that have released, it's become very clear that non-foils far exceed the demand for foils. Foils have really started to just fall on the totem pole in terms of how premium they are, how cool they are, how sought after they are. Because with most products like Masters, with the various Masters products, with Commander Legends, for example, any of these supplementary box products, they've really gone away from making foils premium to putting foils in every pack. And I think with how common they are, it's really brought down the value on them. That being said, let's look at each of the individual cards, and I'll kind of give a breakdown. We'll look at how many printings there are, their price differences, and try and gauge, is there anything right now that may be actionable in the future? Because really that's the point of this. This is just to help people maybe find spots where it may be profitable and figuring out what's a good buy and what's not. So first card, I'll just go down the list alphabetically. So if you want to skip ahead, if you're curious about certain cards, feel free to do so. First card, alphabetically, Bane of Progress. So Bane of Progress has 3 printings. It was originally printed in Commander 2013. The second printing was in Commander 2015, and the most recent reprinting was in Commander Anthology. The pre-sales right now are basically the same price as the previous listings. There really isn't a huge difference in terms of Commander 2013 versus 15 versus Anthology. They're basically all hovering about the same price. The unique nature of this card is that the premium version of this, the full version of this, is the first time this card will be in foil. The previous versions all non-foils because it's not Commander. They weren't in. It's not legendary, so it can't. It won't be featured on the front of the product, which is really the only way some of these cards would be foil. So this is actually the first foil printing, and I think that is potentially something to watch out for. I think that is the fact that that card is unique may mean that there is a little bit more potential for that card. The demand may be inherently higher for that card, because if the non-foil version, if all of them are going to be the same price, people may not necessarily care. People may not necessarily care about which set it's from. People may just want to be buying whatever the cheapest version is. And I think the fact that this card now exists in foil for a first time is something that's a little bit different. Sure, some people may like the art a little bit more in this one, but I don't think that's going to be enough to really give it any substantial amount of premium over the other three arts, which are all exactly the same. All the reprint versions have used the same art from Commander 2013. And right now in front of me on TCG Player, I'm seeing the non-foil is just about $7, and that's basically kind of in the same price range as the other ones, which are all hovering about $6.50 to $7. The foil one, again, as mentioned, first time printing in foil, it does have a bit of a premium. I don't really see many listings for foil. There's actually only one seller listing. They have it at $17, which is almost 3 times the price of the non-foil. It's hard to say if this is a good price or not. I do think it's a reasonable spot, again, just because the people who do like to completely foil out their deck, if they play Bane of Progress, this is going to be a sore thumb that's sticking out prior to the release of Commander Collection Green. And here, they finally have the option to get a foil one for their deck. So I think the premium on this, the demand on this one will be a little bit higher because it is a premium foil. So that's one of the things to watch out for regarding Bane of Progress. Command Tower, next card on the list. I've definitely spoken about Command Tower before in the past regarding how many different premium versions there are. I think this is something for us to continue to consider. It does have unique art. This is something I said earlier. There is kind of a green slant to it on the art. It is unique compared to all the other arts, compared to the more generic ones. But as mentioned, same idea with Bane of Progress. I don't think the art alone is enough to really push this price much higher compared to what it should be. If I pull up TCG Player just so I can get the current information. Command Tower. There's a lot of basic versions out there. This is a fairly common card. This is something that basically should be played in 100% of the Commander decks, unless you have some reason to maybe you only play a monocolor deck, you don't really play non-basics, and you have a punishing mechanic for playing non-basics. For example, maybe you have an all red deck that does play Blood Moon, Magus of the Moon, etc. You want as few non-basics as possible. Sure, maybe there's a version, but realistically, Command Tower does go in every single deck. The art, it does have, it is a little bit unique, but there's a lot of really affordable versions out there. I think this currently selling at $7.80 may be a little bit high. That's the cheapest listing I see on TCG Player right now. It's hovering right about $8-9 ish. In my mind, that's a little bit high. I think this does fall into kind of an awkward spot where your cheapest, most basic Command Tower, if you want to go out and you have 10 EDH decks and your goal is to build 4 more EDH decks, for example, if your choice is buying this version, and they might all be green, I think there may be people who may be discouraged from buying this because this version of Command Tower doesn't fit into their non-green deck. Who knows? That may possibly be a thing. When you're comparing this to versions of Command Tower that are less than 50 cents, it may be a little bit difficult to be selling this. So I think the price where it's at right now for the non-foil version may be a little bit high. That being said, if we do compare the foil version, it gets a little bit more interesting, because if we look at the foil versions, there's quite a few of them. We have a foil Commander's Arsenal version. That's the original printing for this. There's a Judge promo of Command Tower, which has original art. It just comes in foil with the shooting star of the DCI in the text box in the hollow. And then we also have the Commander Legends extended art foil. Same idea, same art. It just happens to be extended, and that's foil. I think the foil version on this does fall in kind of an odd spot, mainly because if we compare the premium versions, you have to think in terms of a consumer, how many people are going to want which version. And I think just off the bat, the fact that this does have a green slant, it may discourage people from buying this unless they have a green themed deck. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe there are some people who don't care. Maybe there is a deck is perfectly fine with a green Command Tower. Maybe there are people out there. I don't know. But when we compare the other versions, I think the foil version, which right now I see being right now I see hovering at $18 ish. Not a lot of the listings right now. I imagine the price will continue to go down, but there's actually no foils listing available on this. The market price says last foil sold for $18.60. It does fall in kind of an odd spot because if someone does want a foil version, maybe people want to be spending a lot more on some of the nicer versions. The Commander Arsenals, the Judge promo, those are right about $80 to $90. They've actually dropped in price. I remember when I was looking at these a few weeks ago when I kind of did a brief introduction on Commander Collection Green and talking about it, I think the price was a little bit higher. I want to say the price on some of these nicer foils were about $100, so it does seem like the prices are guessed a little bit. And as we kind of look at all these types of premium products, Soul Ring, another card in the set that we'll be talking about a little bit later, the idea remains constant. When there's more premium versions available, the demand on each individual version is going to fall. And in short, all that means is the liquidity on each of them is going to be less because people have more options to work with. Maybe people don't like a certain art, maybe they're looking for a specific art. And now, with each version that's being added on top, it means that there is going to be more demand that's spread out between each individual card. And that does make it tough because if we go back a few years, people really only had a choice for a full Command Tower between your Commander's Arsenal or your Judge foil. With this year, we have two more choices on top of that. So the choices for foil versions have now doubled. And it's really creating this really odd tension in terms of how easy it is going to be for you to sell your cards. And the Commander Legends Extended Art Foil that just came out not too long ago. It was a recent printing. Commander Legends has been out for 2 weeks at this point. And that's really going to shift how easy it is to cash out on some of these cards and how easy it is going to be for some of the people who want to be selling out of these old versions they may already have. I think the spread is going to be a big factor here because there's not a lot of in-between, so maybe that's where the full version of Commander Collection Green Command Tower find its home, because your choices are not that great, because you're either looking at a relatively cheap version if you want just your most basic Command Tower, 50 cents, easy. Order from TCG, 50 cents, you can buy 10 of them to get your free shipping or whatever, spend $5, it'll be at your door in a week. If you want to go up from that, if you're looking for a premium version, now you're starting to talk a fairly decent amount of money. Even the Commander Legends version, the most recent one, 2 weeks ago, when I had looked, there weren't a lot of listings. I think if I click on it right now, the full is $21, so a little bit more expensive than your a little more expensive than your Commander Collection Green version. There's a decent amount of them listed out there, so those may be the two in between that people are okay with, because your next jump up is pretty substantial. You're going from about $20 to $90 to $100 for these, so it's a pretty big jump up. So maybe this finds its home where people are trying to spend some amount of money on a nice foil just to upgrade from their non-foil version, but they don't want to break the bank by going from spending a dollar or two to $100 for their foil. So that's kind of where Command Tower sits. It's definitely one of the more interesting ones because it is so common. There may be enough demand for people to want to continue to buy both the non-foil and foil versions. That's something that will remain to be seen. The next card, fairly straightforward, Freyalise Lawn of War's Fury. This is a Planeswalker. The year 2014 was when it was released. This was the first introduction of Planeswalkers being commanders. So there was it was a year monocolor commanders. Each color had a separate commander. Freyalise was a green one. There are only 2 printings for this. You had the 2014 printing and you had the anthology printing. This is a type of card, I think, that demand is high. People definitely do want this card, but this is something the supply will very, very, very rapidly exceed. Mainly because when I looked at EDH Rec to look at some of the data, to look how this card performed, this card was the type of card where people were basically only playing this as a commander. It didn't seem like this was really a card that fit into people's 99. If people were playing this, basically their commander. That really does put an upper limit on how many of these are going to be able to sell, mainly because unlike Command Tower, unlike Soul Ring, and I've experienced this as well, I've had orders where people are buying 5 Command Towers, 5 Soul Rings, because I can only assume they're building 5 new EDH decks. Even if someone is building a bunch of new EDH decks, most likely only one of those decks will be playing Freyalise, and even if all 5 of those decks have green in some capacity, and maybe another one does play Freyalise, they're only going to be ordering 2 at most, which is fine. But I think that is something to note. I think this is the type of card I would stay away from, because once people get kind of their initial offering, once people are there and they've bought what they need for their decks, they're not really going to be building more, because it's unlikely that this card, again, as mentioned, fits into 99, so people are unlikely to be buying more of these other than what works for their deck, and I would only assume that it doesn't really make sense for someone to have more than one Freyalise commander deck, because as a commander, there's only so much design you can do into that space. To me, it doesn't really make sense for them to have 2 separate Freyalise decks that do 2 different things. Maybe there are people out there that do that. I couldn't tell you, but from my experience, there's a pretty hard cap on how many people will be buying this. Moving onward, next card, Omnath, Locus of Mana. This is the original printing of Omnath. This is the mono green Omnath. This is when it was only one color. It came out in Worldwake. That was the initial printing. And the second printing was in Commander Legends. From Commander Legend. From the Vault Legends about a year later. So both these printings pretty old. We're looking at 2010 for Worldwake, 2011 for From the Vault Legends. So these cards, basically a decade old, have not seen a reprint. This is the first reprint, and this is something that's available both non-foil foil. When I looked at the data, when I looked at the Worldwake, which there would already exist a foil non-foil version, I noticed that the spread on the non-foil and foil is a pretty small spread. We're looking about low 30s for the non-foil version and about low 40s for the foil version. So not a lot of difference. There's another card on this list where the spread is pretty big on a foil version. So the fact that there's a pretty tight spread on this, I think that means that the price will remain relatively steady, and I think that really sets a pretty good bar on what these two should be. I think the fact that the From the Vault Legends exists and it's the exact same art, it's recycled art, means that it's going to be not terribly different in terms of the price on the cards. And I do think that the Commander Collection Green version is basically going to be tied relatively close. The art is cool, it's different. Not sure people are really going to care enough to choose one art versus the other. I think this is going to be the perfect type of card that is going to be accessible to people. We'll probably see a small price drop in the beginning as people, if people do think that this is a reprint, it's going to bring the price down. But I do expect that these prices should come back because Omnath is definitely one of those cards. It's very easy to sell. It's a very, very popular commander card. It really goes in a lot of green decks. It's also the type of card where if you play any sort of ramp strategy, it works well as being included in your 99 as well as being your commander. So fairly straightforward, this card, not too much to talk about. The next card, Seedborn Muse. This is the one that's probably the most interesting. There are 5 total printings. The original printing was from Legions, and there are 9th, 10th, Battle Bond, and Commander 19 as the other reprint versions of this. Same idea as most of these, the non-foil version. It is a nice inclusion. It does have different art, so it is going to be roughly the same price as all these other ones. Um, uh, in terms of uh, in terms of demand, again, the price probably going to be relatively constant. People are going to look at this, think, "Ooh, this is a reprint. I can finally get Seaborn Muse for a deck." If they haven't already, Seaborn Muse has kind of really been printed so much that the price hasn't really fluctuated upwards or downwards too dramatically. I don't suspect that this being reprinted will affect the prices too much. It is important to note that most of the foils are kind of the same price. The one that really stands out is Legion. The Legion foil is over $100, so that's a 20 times increase. I think the big virtue there is that foils from that era, this is again well before foils were really as commonplace as they are today. Finding foils from the era that are in nice condition going to be pretty difficult, and I do imagine that's a big part in that foil multiplier. I think there will be definitely amount of people who, if they want foils for their deck, will always look towards that version as kind of the OG, as the best version they can get. It has the old card frame. Some people do like that. So Seedborn Muse, the new version in foil, probably going to fall somewhere more in line with what is going to probably go fall somewhere more in line with what the new printings, 9th, 10th Battle Bond would look like in terms of foil. I don't think there's going to be anything too actionable there. Seedborn Muse, definitely the type of card that does very well. I have no problem selling these cards. It's hard to keep these cards in stock. For the most part, people that play green, I think Seedborn Muse really embodies the flavor of green. You have lots of land. It works well in ramp strategies. Being able to untap mana on your opponent's turns really kind of creates that explosive strategy that we're used to for green decks, and I think that's why it's as popular as it is. Sol Ring, everyone's favorite commander card. Lots of back and forth on this. I know people have very strong feelings about playing Sol Ring in their deck, not playing Sol Ring in their deck, what it means to have in your opening hand, how far ahead you can get. How often it breaks the game when people do get it on the early turns just because it puts them so far ahead in mana. We've talked about Sol Ring before on previous episodes, and I think that this is one of those things where it is worth repeating. There's a lot of overlap with what's being said about Sol Ring and Command Tower. Command Tower obviously not quite as extreme. With Sol Ring, there's just so many premium versions, and the spread is even larger than with Command Tower. If we look at premium versions alone, we have Alpha Beta Unlimited, if people like the old frames. If people like the old frame, but in foil, you have the Judge version. You have the Masterpiece version from Kaladesh, the Inventions. You have the Magic Fest promo, which has gone down quite substantially in price. We recently had Commander Legends came out that has the kind of the series from Commander. Every Commander box set has used the same art, and now they've extended that art inside Commander Legends, and then on top of that, you can get extended art. You can also get an extended art foil. So a ton of printings on these, and those are pretty widespread in prices. When I checked right before writing this, the Magic Fest foil, which you got by attending Magic Fest and signing up for the Command Fest package, it's down to $25. This was something, it was much more expensive before. It really feels that the price on them has dropped pretty substantially, because if you follow Channel Fireball, they do things like Command Fest in a box type thing where they basically sell these little pre-made kits, ideal for people who want to get started into Commander. And often they do include one of these promos inside. That's really brought the price down. I remember when I was at Magic Fest Las Vegas last year, that was their first real introduction to Command Fest. This was where it was first available. It was a much bigger deal. The foils alone, vendors were basically paying about $100 on, and the markup on them was pretty substantial. They were pretty rare, and people want them because it was just another full Sol Ring. That was something that was really done before, but now, as mentioned, now you can get the Magic Fest in a box, or the Command Fest in a box type thing from Channel Fireball, and they distribute these foils pretty openly. The price has gone down pretty substantially. Now on TCG Player, you can buy it for $25. The Commander Legends Extended Art Foil, $40. It just came out, not too terribly expensive. I didn't see a lot of listings on this one, so it's possible that some people really like this art. They like the modern card frame. with the modern art, and now it's extended. So maybe this is a version that people choose. If you want the more high end versions, unlimited versions are a pretty big spare in price. Most of them are going to be pretty played. It's an old card, unlimited, right? We're talking a card that's 25-ish years now. 25, 26 years. So it's getting pretty old. Most of them are going to be pretty B. If you want a nice version, you're really going to be paying probably over $100 for LP to near mint versions. If you want a blockboard version, you're looking upgrading to beta. You're basically in the $500 range. And if you really want the kind of the most expensive version you can get, there's alpha, over $1,000 for HP versions. Trying to find a nicer version probably going to cost you substantially more on top of that. You want foils, Judge foils hovering right about $300, masterpieces hovering about $550. So there's a lot of options for people to choose for their Soul Ring. If you just want your basic Commander version, that the cheapest one you can get, about $1.50, $2. There's abundance of on TCG Player from all sets, all the way from the original printing of the Commander theme decks, 2011, 2013, 14, 15, all the way up to Commander Legends now. No shortage of them, pretty easy to get. Having another option on top is only going to make it harder, and I think that this is going to be the type of card that, while there's going to be a lot of demand for it, every deck plays Soul Ring, realistically. There's just so many choices to choose from. I would probably steer clear of this, mainly because I don't really know where a good home for this card fits. As mentioned, if people want a cheap version, you can spend $1.50, $2 and get your base version. If you're looking for a foil version, there's a lot of choices. I think all those choices are really going to be fighting for demand with Commander Collection Green Premium, and it really makes it a tough sell. But I don't doubt there will be people that have to get the green command tower to match their green Soul Ring to go into their mono green deck, and that's great. I'm glad that those people have a version that they'll like, that version that they'll be wanting to buy. But I do think those people are going to be relatively few in between, especially when you compare to how many versions of both non-foil and full Soul Rings there are. Moving on, Sylvan Library. Sylvan Library is one of the more expensive ones in the set. The price on Sylvan Library has basically gone up in the past few months. And the printings, there's no shortage of printings, actually. There's Legends, 4th edition, 5th edition, Commander Arsenal, and EMA, and there's actually 2 gold bordered versions as well. So of those, there's 2 full versions, Commander's Arsenal and Eternal Masters. Both of these pretty similar in price, and now we kind of, same idea as the other premium versions, we have a third one in the mix, and there's definitely going to be more choices for people to choose from. I think that this is also the type of card I would steer away from, mainly because in terms of liquidity, a lot of decks do play Sylvan Library. It's a very good card. It also sees some legacy play, which is kind of a boon for that card. The fact that there is another non-foil option and a foil option really increases kind of how accessible this card is. The full versions, Commander Arsenal and Eternal Masters, pretty similar in price, pretty hard to come by. Eternal Masters is about 4 years old at this point. Not a lot of Eternal Masters product being open, not a lot of it out there in the market that's kind of free floating around. So those prices are pretty high. It'll be interesting to see where the price goes, just in terms of accessibility for people who do want foils. In terms of non-foils, the Legends is kind of, in my mind, I've had the best experience trying to sell the Legends version because people want that really original art with the black border from Legends 1994. So kind of hard to get that card. It's virtually nice condition, but the easiest one to sell by far, Eternal Masters. That one, a lot of demand for that card. It has a modern card frame. That's the only version of the card in the modern card frame that is non-foil at this time. If you want a modern card frame, you're looking at your Commander's Arsenal, which is foil. Not everyone likes that, so the Eternal Masters one, really the easiest one to sell, the most demand for that one. Now we do have another non-foil version of the mix. I imagine that it'll probably be equally as liquid. Very easy to sell, a lot of demand on that card. But I think the price at it's currently at maybe a little bit too high for people to really get in and maybe spec on it. I think this possibly, though, is the type of card where if you want to buy into the dip, depending on how many of these singles are going to be listed and available within the next few days as people start to pre-sell them, if this is enough for the price to come down because of the reprint and people do interpret it that way, it may be possible to buy when it's at the bottom within the next few days. And then as supply slowly starts to dry up on this product, like all their product, we'll probably see the price slowly climb up again, as it has a bit slower because there's always just more of this available. But for basically the duration of this year, Sylvan Library really hasn't done anything but go up. The last card is probably the one that I think, in my mind, is the most actionable, Worldly Tutor. There's only 2 printings of this card, Mirage and 6th edition. They both have the same art. This is the first time this card will exist in foil. And I think this is something that's worth noting. This is kind of falls in the same boat as Bane of Progress. I think this card is better than Bane of Progress because this card it's a tutor. If your group is good with tutors, this is the type of tutor that really goes into every green deck. It allows you to find some of your key pieces, what have you. I think the fact that this is the first time foil is a big deal. I think it's a big selling point for this card. I think this is the type of card that if the premium versions are going to be as rare as we think they are, if there are definitely as few premium sets out there as one would think, there may be an opportunity for this card to go up substantially in the future when there just isn't a lot to go around. So my two choices for buys are Bane of Progress foil and Worldly Tutor foil. They have the most potential, I think. Whereas if you want something safe, maybe just look at Sylvan Library non-foil, Seaborn Muse non-foil. Those are type of cards that are very liquid. They sell very quickly. There's a lot of demand for them in green decks. And I wouldn't mind if I had the opportunity to buy 100 of those copies and slowly sell them, because they will sell at the right number over time. So with that covers all 8 cards. That'll be a wrap on today's episode. I think the final verdict on this, in terms of how much I like this product, is I'm kind of lukewarm about it. I think this type of product is definitely cool. But my experience in the past, if we look at a lot of the past box sets, if we go back and take a look at from the vault in general, there's Signature Spellbook with the Planeswalkers. People definitely do like them, but the subset of people that want to be buying the entire box is going to be relatively low. I think that there may be some players who buy this and use up every card. That's great. That's exactly why this product will sell, because there will be people who buy this and think this is awesome. I basically have all the makings for a green EDH deck with just this one box. I'm gonna start and try and go out and buy the rest of the cards for this deck. That's great. That's exactly what Wizards wants to do with this product. That's exactly the type of consumer retail stores want with this product. That's the type of this is like a product that will help stores sell more Commander cards. This is great. There's definitely going to be a fair amount of people that maybe they only want a few specific cards inside the deck, inside the box. They're going to buy the box. They're going to piece it out. They'll keep 3 of the 8 cards and maybe try and sell off those 5 extra cards to try and recuperate their cost as much as possible, bring their cost down, and maybe try and get the cards they're keeping as free as possible. I think that's perfectly legitimate strategy as well. I think the danger is that, one, it's a box set. It's big. I haven't looked at it. I imagine it's probably going to be kind of like a deck box size, probably not too different from this type of deck box, a VIP deck box from Double Masters. So they're a little bit bulky. I definitely don't want to be in a position where I'm buying 100 of these sets, putting them in a box, storing them away, and trying to resell them in a few years. If we look at the trend from the vaults, most of them haven't really appreciated substantially in price. Most of them have remained pretty constant in price throughout. Obviously, the ones that are kind of the exception would be relics. A big part of that would be Mox Diamond getting as really expensive as it has. But I think most of these aren't really great long-term holds, mainly because of the cards inside. Once cards are getting reprinted, it lowers the value of the box. Because if you look at master sets, the value, because there's no new cards inside, there's nothing unique about the box itself. The value is tied to, one, how good the draft format is, how much people like drafting it, and two, the value of the cards inside. As these cards get reprinted over time, it lowers the EV of a box. If you go back all the way to Modern Masters 2013, the very first printing of Modern Masters, the box has remained stable basically for the past 4 years. It hasn't really gone up, it hasn't really gone down. There's been some brief surges where people were wanting Modern Masters boxes, but for the most part, it's remained pretty steady in price. And those cards, a lot of the cards that were in the original Modern Masters that were expensive at the time Modern Masters was printed, have gone down substantially. Tarmogoyf, when it came out, when Modern Masters came out, Tarmogoyf was pushing like $200 card. Now you can go buy Tarmogoyfs all day in all flavors for about $40 to $50. Chalice of the Void was another one that wasn't really on the radar. That was a rare in Modern Masters. That's been reprinted a few times. That's gone down in price as well. So the list goes on, but the idea here is that the cap on these boxes, it does remain relatively constant. I think the ceiling is going to be something that is going to be pretty hard ceiling for it to bust through. I don't really see a reason to hold on to these long term. I just don't think there's enough opportunity there that you want to be setting aside a lot of space and a lot of money to really be pouring in. I think if you do want to buy something, go for specific cards. Go buy the foil Worldly Tutors, go buy the foil Bane of Progresses, go buy the non-foil Seedborn Muses, the Sylvan Libraries, etc. if you want to be holding on to this product. But you have to remember, there's no guarantee with the way Wizards has been printing and reprinting cards this year. If we look at it alone, we've seen a ton of reprints this year. For the most part, it's really cratered price on these cards. I do imagine that will be a point in the future where I'm going to look back in this video and chuckle to myself, because there won't just be one printing of foil Bane of Progress anymore. There won't just be one printing of foil Worldly Tutor anymore. I think Wizards is well aware that if there's an opportunity for them to make money by printing these cards in more sets, they will do so. We've seen Secret Lairs evidence of this. I think if they find an opportunity for them to put Worldly Tutor into Secret Lair, maybe it's Secret Lair Tutors, for example, that would be a spot where you no longer have a premium version of Worldly Tutor. Worldly Tutor foil from the set is no longer unique, and then it's going to become hard to sell, and it kind of falls in the same category as some of these other versions in their premium. It'll kind of be the same idea as Soul Ring, same idea as Command Tower, obviously not quite as extreme, but when you have more versions for people to choose, the liquidity and demand for each one goes down. So that's something to keep in mind. If I did want to buy in the singles, I'd probably be looking about a year turnaround once it slowly starts to creep up in price. If we see a 10-20% price increase on these, that may be my time to cash out. With that, that'll be a wrap on today's episode. As always, thank you for listening. You can find me on Twitter at Edwin13. You can find the social media sites for Vermilion PDX on the right. Thank you all for listening. If you have any feedback, feel free to reach out. I do, again, read all the feedback, listen to all the feedback, and try and interact with listeners as much as possible. Stay safe, and we'll be back tomorrow with more. Thanks again.